I don't know whether, right, now it has been started. Okay. So the tension members occurs as a component of the truss or even at the bridges, cable stayed bridges, or main cable or the stay cable, whatever the cable stayed bridges, those cables are also formed as a or composed as a tension member. Sometimes you may have seen also in the truss or the roof, there is the purlins and the sag rods. Sorry, purlins and sag rods. Those purlins and sag rods are also to be considered as the tension member. Okay, even the bottom cord tie or the bottom or top cord of the truss, and even in the bridge deck also the bottom cord or the top cord also could be considered as the tension member. And obviously the tensile nature of the force are primarily applicable because you know that when a particular structure is composed of either it is a, let's say it is a bridge, okay, it is the having two components, bottom cord and top cord. Okay, now depending on the nature of, if the loads are being reversible in nature, the top cord which is being supposed to consider as a tension member, they may go to into the compression in zone. So whenever we talk about the steel tension, steel member which is subjected to the tensile in nature, it eventually will also consider certain amount of your compression nature of the force, because if you look into the stress strain diagram also, perhaps there would be very little differences over here. And obviously in the tension member, the test coupon or whenever we do the testing of the tensile member, we generally do not bother about the compression or the yes, we do not generally bother about the compressive stress strain behavior, rather tensile stress strain behavior. Okay, and thereby the all the yield point, ultimate point, the your plasticity, everything develops over there. Okay, now next point is, this is one of the typical case where the entire bridge is composed of with the tension member. It is a bridge which is been available in the Brisbane in Australia. So most of the components of the bridges, except the deck of the bridge, this is the deck of the bridge, all the components of the all the components of these bridges are basically tensegrity in nature. Tensegrity in nature means that all the members are subjected to the tensile in nature. So I would appreciate if you guys could develop certain model whenever you will be coming over here. Can we develop some certain tensegrity structure as a model kind of thing? Okay. So tensegrity structure means all the components in the structure would be subjected to the pure tension. There is no compression in nature. Okay, so you have to arrange the structural members or components in such a way that all the things would be under the pure tension in nature. So this is a hybrid tensegrity structure. Why it is saying it is in a hybrid? Because the deck, which cannot be eventually to be considered as the tension member itself. Okay. Now next to I'll be coming towards what are the different types of tension members. Okay, that also you have, I believe that all of you have seen already, that this is, let's say this is an angle section, this is a T section, this is a channel section, this is a box section and all. Primarily, most of the steel components of the steel structures are composed of two different configuration. One is called the hot rolled, and another one is the cold formed. Hot rolled, cold formed, and another one, third one is the built up. Sorry, it is basically three. Hot rolled means, let's say for example, what is meant by the hot rolled? There would not be any sharp deviation in your edges. Cold form means it is a in other way around, the depending on the nature of the thermal quenching process, whenever the material or whenever the structural component forms, that is to be considered as a cold formed. And what is meant with the built up? Built up means, let's say for example, I want to build up a angle section. What I can do, I can take two plate, and these two plates are I am welding together to make an angle section. Now you see, you can definitely see that what are the differences are coming. Okay, so in the hot rolled section, which are typically available in the market, and it is being specified their geometry and the strength and all. So most of the steel structural systems are primarily composed of this hot rolled section. If it is not available, then we need to go with the built up section. Built up section means nothing but you are building up your own desired cross section. Okay, it can be the channel, it can be the eye, it can be the T, it can be the box, anything. Okay, now actually here the typical picture is showing somewhat incorrect in nature because it is having a sharp edges. So even though I have been provided over here, this is a hot roll. Okay, but it is not hot roll, it is a rolled section. If it is coming hot rolled, then there should not be any sharp edges. Okay, and thereby whenever we do the welding or the welded connection, you will have that from the top of the portion 3/8 distance, 3/4 or 3/8 distance of the thickness of the connected member. From there you have to start your welding and all. There is a certain thing called, it is a compound section. Compound section means, let's say for example, one eye section is not sufficient to consider or take the amount of load which is being exposed to the structure or subjected onto the structure. Okay, in that context, let's say I have some reservation over there that I have to have or apply or use only the angle section. Then what I can do a angle section or in the way that in between a gusset plate, if I am providing, then both the sides of the gusset plate I will be attaching this angle section, then I will be making a compound section. Similarly over here, this is another one typical example for the compound section. And these are somewhat rolled section or hot rolled or cold rolled, it may be. Okay. Likewise, you will have the ropes also. Likewise, you will have the different kinds of ropes. Now, this particular slide, whatever the schematics I have been presented, you have already gone through. I believe that you have already gone through all the lecture slides. So I am just skipping out to this particular lecture slide. So it is nothing but that how the different members are connected with each other. Doesn't matter whether it would be the tension member only, it can be the compression member also, or it can be the only the purely axially loaded member also. Okay. Now, where these ropes are being utilized, these ropes, how do we choose or how do we frame the ropes? Ropes are being framed in this particular fashion. It is being wired up. Okay. And this is a cable stayed bridge. This is a cable stayed bridge. Some of you might be from Eastern India. So over the Hooghly Bridge, over this Ganga river, there is one bridge in Calcutta that is called the Second Hooghly Bridge. So that Second Hooghly Bridge is primarily composed of this particular configuration. So it is primarily of the ropes, and those ropes are nothing but those are the tendons or those are the tensile members acting as a tensile member. Okay. Before going to the modes of failure, now the actual basis of the design of this tension member comes into the picture. Okay, so before going to the tension member design or the modes of the failure, let me emphasize certain few features over there that we need to, or the designer need to adhere with. So what are those different features? First of all, the slenderness ratio. All of you have heard about the slenderness ratio. Slenderness ratio is basically termed as or defined as L/R ratio. Okay, so this L/R ratio, depending on this L/R ratio, what is the purpose of this slenderness ratio? I think some of you know it, but you might forget that one. I would define the way that although the stiffness is not required for the strength of a tension member, a minimum stiffness is stipulated by limiting the maximum slenderness ratio. So the stiffness and slenderness ratio both are interlinked with each other. Okay, stiffness and slenderness ratio. The slenderness ratio of a tension member is defined. How it would be defined? It is defined by the length, or I would say sometimes it is an effective length or unsupported length to its least radius of gyration. What is meant by the least radius of gyration? Because you have two different planes like plane XX, plane YY, and plane ZZ. Out of these three planes or two planes on which the load is being acting or the member is being designing, you have to take into consideration of the least radius of gyrations. Now, this limiting slenderness ratio is required in order to prevent the undesirable lateral movement or the excessive vibration. So undesired lateral movement or the excessive vibration. That means we are going towards the serviceability limit state, right? Is it not? Deflection is one of the criteria, and the undesirable vibration is also one of the criteria. So this L/R ratio typically ensures that to prevent the undesirable lateral movement or lateral deformation and the excessive deformations. So in the IS code, IS 800, there is a particular tabular format where the maximum slenderness ratio is being provided for the tension member, for the compression member, or the member which is subjected to the compressive force. And there is a particular limit. Like for example, in the concrete design, if we want to design a particular cantilever beam, let's say, okay, if the length of the beam is total length of the beam is L, then sometimes we may need to require that the deflection should not reach or exceed L/180. What is meant by the L/180? L/180 is coming the length or the unsupported or the effective length divided by 180 is the factor that is being postulated by doing some experimentation. And your deflection, you have to design the beam in such a way that the deflection should not be more than that. Okay, what is the implication of that? The implication is again the same thing, to prevent the undesirable or excessive lateral deformation from a serviceability point of view, not from the strength point of view. Okay, and also from a excessive vibration. So I would propose that all of you please have a look into the IS code to have to gather about that what is the limiting slenderness ratio, maximum slenderness ratio that has been postulated while making the design of this particular tension members. Okay. Now next I'll be going towards the modes of failure of the tension member. Typically there are three different modes of failure. One is the gross section yielding, then the net section rupture or the net section failure, and the block shear failure. Okay. So what is the gross section yielding? Why do we require gross section yielding? Generally, what happens, a tension member, when tension member without the bolt hole can resist the loads up to the ultimate load without failure, that you know. I think Anirudh was posed the same question, that why we are only bothering about the yield limit, the gross section yielding. Here the explanation would come. Generally, a tension member without bolt hole can resist the failure or can resist the load up to the ultimate load, can resist the load up to the ultimate load without any failure. But you know that such a member will deform in the longitudinal direction considerably high, that is around 10 to 15%. You know the elongation. What elongation means? Percentage elongation. Whenever we do any testing, we have to have certain value of that how much is the percentage elongation of that particular member. Generally, it used to happen around 10 to 20% or 25%, and that is desirable. Okay. So that elongation will be there before the fracture. Okay, before the fracture. At such a such a large amount of deformation, structure becomes unserviceable. Unserviceable means it is not obeying the serviceability limit state. Okay, if I stay in a house where a particular beam is having excessive deformation, I would prefer not to stay over there, because even the structure will not fall, but the point is I'll be feeling uncomfortable by looking into that. So that is an unserviceable in conditions. That is why one of the limiting value in the design is one that corresponds to the yielding of the gross cross section, and which is being evaluated by using this particular formula. What happened? By using this particular formula, where Fy is the yield strength, Ag is your gross area, and gamma m naught is the partial safety factor in failure in tension for the yielding, which is 1.10. The next thing would be coming about the tension rupture failure, or I would say it is the net section rupture. What is meant by the net section rupture again? Net section rupture is saying something like, you can see the photograph over here. Okay. A tension member is often connected to the main or other subsidiary members by bolting or welding. Okay. Or secondary members. Now, when it is connected using the bolt, the tension member have the holes, and thereby it reduces the cross section. Now, once it reduces the cross section, that reduced cross section is referred to as a net area or net cross section area. The holes in the members, whatever the holes are there in the members, that causes excessive stress at the point where the hole starts. Okay, so that means a stress concentration features develops over there. A stress concentration features develops over there. Now, from the theory of elasticity or the strength of materials or mechanics of materials or solid mechanics aspect, we know that the tensile stress adjacent to a hole will be about 2 to 3 times. The average value will be 2 to 3 times of the maximum force or maximum stress. Maximum stress means at the tip of that hole. Okay, at the tip of that hole. But in normal condition, we should have like this way. So this is called a net section rupture failure. Okay, this is called a net section rupture failure. Now, when the tension member with a hole is loaded statically, the point, that is what I'm saying, the point adjacent to the hole reaches to its yield point. This point actually reaches already, these 2 points already reaches the yield point, and then it crosses the yield point. That is why the stress concentration happens, right? Or it develops. So if we develop, or if we providing more and more load over there, what would happen? That each fiber away from the hole will progressively reach to the maximum value or the ultimate value. And that is why in the net section rupture, we are basically considering the FU, not the FY. Okay. Now this 0.9, as I said, it is somewhat I would prefer to say it is a reserve strength, but some of the textbook and literature, it says that it comes from the test result of this particular way of intentionally making the failure, that how much amount of total force that is coming onto the picture. Okay. And the net section, net effective area, how do we calculate? Net effective area, you will be calculate again the same thing. I'll show you in the next few slides. Okay. And the third failure mode is called the block shear failure. Block shear means the entire block of this connected part is getting out from the connection. So a particular block is getting out, not necessarily that it will happen only when the bolted connection is there. It may happen in the welded connection also. It may happen in the welded connection also. Okay. So I'll come to the how it may happen to the welded connection and how the things are being coming over there. So let me explain over here a little bit very briefly that originally this block shear failure was observed in the bolted shear connection at the coped beam ends. Block shear is typically, it is now widely been recognized as a potential failure mode at the where the failure mode will happen, whether it would be the middle of the beam or end of the beam, it will happen at the end of the beam of axially loaded tension member. And in this particular failure mode, the failure of the member occurs along the path involving both the tension as well as shear. Tension as well as in shear. Shear would be on the perpendicular plane along the fasteners on which the load is being applied. Okay, so these are the typical example or the schematics that is being evaluated over here. And now over here, you see this particular portion is subjected to the shear area and the tension. This is the tensile force that is because this tensile force is trying to make that particular entire block to get out. Okay, obviously the shear will also be acting simultaneously. So two things are simultaneously acting over there, tension and the shear both. Okay, and that is why two different formulas are being postulated over here in the code. In one of the code, it is being in one of the formula, it is being saying that 0.9 times Fu. What is the Tn? All the things are being provided. ATG, T stands for the tension and V stands for the shear. TG and TN stands for the minimum gross and the net area in the tension along line 2, 3. Along line 2, 3. Okay. And AVG and AVN are the minimum gross and the net area in shear. You know that already the shear would be at here. Okay. So we need to utilize this particular formula to have that how much is the whichever is the how much is the net block shear failure, the force which is happening for this block shear failure. Okay, as I said previously that it may not happen or it should not happen only in the bolted connection, but it has also been seen in the past or in the experimentation that even in the welding also, welded connection also, the similar portion of the block gets out from the fasteners or from the connectors. Okay. Now, how do we define the net area of the net area cross section or net cross sectional area? I think you are well aware of this particular formula, and you know that how do we define it, because we in the past we have gone through or discussed through that there is the net area cross section. It would be dependent on whether the bolts are in a regular mode or the chain bolting or the staggered bolting or the zigzag bolting. Depending on that, you will have your different pitches of the bolt, different gauges of the bolt, or I would not say of the bolt, but I would say pitch of the bolt, gauge of that particular bolts, two bolts in a row or in a column wise vertical row onto the connection itself. So ultimately we can find it out that how much is the gross, how much is the net cross section area. I think we have also been seen some of the example problems over here, and many of you have already been submitted the tutorial. So I believe that you are well aware of this, how to define this net area of the cross section, which is to be required to evaluate the failure mode of the net rupture failure or the net section rupture failure. Now, there are certain things that sometimes not in a frequent mode, but sometimes the designer or the academic, from an academic point of view, people would like to bear about. That is what are the different factors that is affecting to the tension members, the strength of the tension member. Okay. First one is the effect of bolt hole and spacing. It is obvious. If I utilize the 16 mm dia bolt and if I utilize the 20 or 36 mm dia of the bolt, obviously my net area of the cross sectional area would be reduced from the gross cross sectional compared to the gross cross sectional area. So it will directly hamper or it will directly affect to the strength of the tension member. Then net area of the cross section, it is again the dependent on the bolt hole and the spacing. Then the bearing stress. What is meant by the bearing stress? Bearing stress means two plates are connected together and one bolt is being placed in a schematic. Now this particular plate is applied certain force T and this particular plate is applied certain T. Okay. Now, out of these two plates which are being connected together, that one of the plates material characteristics or material property is somewhat weaker compared to the other plate. Okay, both are steel plate, but one plate is having lesser yield strength, another one plate is having higher yield strength. So what would happen? The bolt will try to press onto the bolt hole along the weaker plate, and it will give a thrust over there. Okay, so if it is giving a thrust over there, that is called the effect of the bearing stress, which is being subjecting to by the bolt to the member. Similarly, there is another one effect is there, that is called effect of shear lag. Okay, what is mean by this shear lag? The force that is being transferred to a tension member, maybe it is a angle section, channel section, or T section, which is being connected by a gusset, or the adjacent member which is being connected is one of the leg. Like for example, a tension member is connected with an angle section, okay, with the angle section, bolts are being it is being connected. So it is having one connected leg and one unconnected leg, but the angle is angle that it is a single entity. So what would happen? The amount of stress that is being, or the shear flow that is being available at this connected portion, and amount of shear flow which is being available over there, if any, there is a lag or there is a differences. Okay, that is why it is called the lagging in shear, because if both the leg, any channel section is having two legs, if both the legs are connected, there is hardly much difference would be there. But if one leg is connected, then there would be a differences in shear flow from one leg to the other leg. And when there is a uniformity of the stresses, then only we can consider that particular portion to be considered as the stress is equal to P upon A. Otherwise, if there is any dissimilarity or the discontinuity in the forces, or the certain other kind of stresses like this way, the variation, then we cannot calculate the stress which is being acting over there. Okay, so the force that it is being transferred to one leg by the end connection locally gets transferred as a tension force or the tensile stress over the entire cross section by shear. And therefore, this particular tensile stress on the section from the first bolt hole up to the last bolt hole will not be uniform. That means it is a, what I said previously, that is a non-uniformity. And now this connected leg will have a higher stress. Obviously, connected leg will have a higher stress at failure. Even the order of ultimate stress, while the outstanding leg means which is not been connected leg, the stress may be even far below than the yield stress. So this difference between the stresses between the outstanding leg or the unconnected leg and the connected leg, that is the only thing that is called the shear. So this shear lag effect essentially reduces with increasing in connection length. Because if we increase the connection length, what would happen? The non-uniformity or the discontinuity, even if it happens at certain point of time, after certain point of time in the connection, it will be on the connected leg itself. At a certain point of time, it would be uniform. It will start uniformity in the stresses. And then there will not be any difference in the outstanding or the unconnected leg to the connected leg of that particular portion. Okay. Next one is the residual stress component, effect of residual stress component and the initial crookedness. Residual stress, effect of residual stress. I think we have already been covered this effect of residual stresses on different bolted connection, and as well as the if there is any residual stress on the I section, then what is the net effect would be there once it is being connected together, whether it is a tension member or whether it is a compression member. That is the same thing. Initial residual stress will always be there, definitely, because of this thermal quenching process. All our structural steel components are composed of the typical heat treatment process, and due to this heat treatment process, during the cooling down, let's say, for example, if I take an I section, then up to this point, the cooling down would be lesser. The flange, this outer portion, the cooling down would be faster. Similarly, in the wave also, this particular portion would be cooling down faster rather than cooling down over here. So there would always be a tensile nature of the residual stress as well as compressive nature of the residual stress in any of the your rolled section, hot rolled or cold rolled section. Okay. And this residual stress will also enhance when we will have the welded connection also. So it will have a not significant effect, but it is having some effect over there. Now next thing is coming the angle under the tension. So angle under the tension, whenever any of the angle member is connected to with some plate or the gusset plate. So what is going to happen? First of all, let us have a look into the how the stress distribution happens over here. So when the angles are connected to other angle through the centroid, and when the holes are staggered on both the planes, when the holes are staggered in these bolt holes are staggered in both the planes, then there would be certain distances required. Certain distances are required. So these distances are basically typically estimated by or to be termed as the shear lag shear lag width. Shear lag width. Because ultimately we have to find it out the net section strength of the angle. If both the legs are being connected, then the shear lag width. How to define the shear lag width? Shear lag width is defined by three different factors: W, G, and T. What is meant by the W? W means it is the length of this outstanding now. G stands for the gauge length. What is meant by the gauge length over here? You might recall that in a particular plate, we can provide the bolt at any place. We can provide the bolt at any place. But in the angle, there is a certain specification. At that particular place, we have to provide the bolt. So that particular place is termed as the gauge length or the gauge distance from one of the end, either this end or this end. So this W is the outstanding length, G is your gauge length or gauge distance, and T is obviously your thickness. Okay. So all these shear lag width are to be evaluated or calculated while making the net section strength of the angle. If it is on a simple plated connection, you need not bother about all the things. But if it is in an I section or the channel section, yes, you have to take care all the issues. Compared to the bolted connection, if we go with the welded connection, what is the shear lag width? Shear lag width would be nothing but the how much is the outstanding leg length. That would be considered as the shear lag width. Okay. So with this, you have to find it out. Again the same formula we are typically being utilized over here. Net section rupture failure. Only differences over here, only this particular part is the difference. What is this particular part? This particular part is coming from a particular factor which is called the beta, and this beta actually nothing but it is the effect of shear lag. Effect of shear lag. Okay, if both the angles or both the legs are connected, then it would be different. And if one of the leg is connected either through the bolt or through the welding, accordingly you have to judiciously choose. Okay, these are all I think I have shown already in the first lecture slide or second lecture slide while making a three-dimensional figure of the I would say three-dimensional figure of the warehouse. Because you see on a particular steel structure warehouse, what are the different components were there? How to define the purlins, how to define the rafters, what is the ridge, what is the sag rod, what is the wind bracing, what is the cross bracing, what is the grit, what is etc. So I am also skipping this, but I have just kept in this particular lecture slide just to revise you or recap that what are the things have been there as a particular component, different components in a industrial shed area. Then there are few example photographs that I thought that I'll be presenting over here or showing over here as where the tension rods are being used or the rods are being used as a tension member. Again, the same thing over here. You might have seen this particular configuration. I think in our campus also at some point of time it was there. This is typically nothing but shed. Again, this shed is again the tensegrity configuration, except the pole which is being provided over here. This is one of the structural component of the structure that if you look into the tower, mobile tower, these particular rods are being utilized for making a cross bracing. Similarly, over here on the overhead water tank, the cross bracings are being utilized over here to make the lateral load resistance. And this is one of the very fantastic case study that I have picked up, that a Hyatt Regency collapse. Okay. It was happened in 1980, a 40-story building or the Hotel Hyatt Regency. The second, the walkway, these two walkway, these are the walkways. Okay. The fourth and the second floor walkways hung one above the other, and the third floor walkway is hung on the offset. This is the second, this is the fourth, and this is the third. It is an offset. So all these walkways are connected to the steel truss that hung from the RTM ceiling. RTM ceiling. Okay. In 1991, during a party at the fourth floor lobby or fourth floor walkway, it fell down. And it was a catastrophic failure. Catastrophic means there is a significant amount of damage was been there. And you know already the law in US. If something happens like a casualty, you are gone. So why it has failed? Okay. You would be surprised to see the difference between the design and construction. The designer was absolutely perfect. This is the original design that was been made. Okay, so here the load P is acting on the nut, and here 2P that is from the hung RTM, and here the CR is being acting over here. Okay, this is the walkway. This is the cross girder or cross beam, and over through the cross beam or cross girder, the walkway is being formed. Now, the guy who has been made the construction, you see, he had been made his own alternate arrangement. Now can you look into that? Even the forces are not balanced properly. Even though I would say that, okay, forces are balanced, fantastic, but there is a couple, it is being forming. It forms a couple over there. So this knot is being, even the forces are being there. First of all, there are two places or two incident happens over there. This is a 2P. The knot has been designed for the load P. So knot has been failed. Okay. Along with that, there is a couple it forms. So due to this, the entire thing collapsed. So there is a significant differences between original design and the actual construction. So the site engineers should have a significant or should be playing a significant role while making the actual construction. And it happens in most of our civil engineering construction. The designer sent something and the construction is being made with something. That is a really, really painful thing. And when the things come into it comes into you, by that time everything is over. The entire construction is done. So I think we should have little careful if we are going to the field. If you are going into the field. Next thing that I want to highlight over here, that is called some terminology that is called the log angle. Okay. Log angle means sometimes you will be hearing about this concept about the log angle. It is nothing but that when a tension member is subjected to a very heavy load, the number of bolts or the length of the weld, either the bolt or the weld which has been required for making this connection with other member becomes significantly large. Let's say 10 mm thickness of the weld is being required, or 36 dia of the bolt is being required. And which results, at the end of the day, it is resulting in the very uneconomical design or uneconomical size of the size requirement of the gusset plate. In such situation, what is required to be done? That an additional short angle may be utilized to reduce the joint length and the shear lag, which is being shown in this particular figure. Okay, it can be developed it can be placed, the lag angle can be placed in one side or lag angle can be placed in the both the sides. So these particular angle, small angle which is being placed, it is called the lag angle. Now, the point being that I am just discussing over here is the location of this lag angle is having some importance. Okay. Why it is important? It is more effective at the beginning of the connection rather than the end of the connection or the middle of the connection. So whenever it is being connected, the main angle section is being connected with the gusset plate with other member. There itself at the beginning, you have to provide this lag angle to take into account the at least some forces which prevents us to utilize that more number of or less number of bolts and weld. Okay. Splices. Next is the things splices. Splices is also known to you. It is nothing but that. Let's say, for example, if I choose certain ISA section, let's say ISA 120 by 75 by 10 mm ISA section I am utilizing. Now, after selecting that, I find that or the architect has given me a particular very weird way that sorry, you have to take the design, you have to take into consideration certain extra amount of load to be there. So think of it in that situation. After making the entire design, if you're telling me that you have to take certain extra amount of load, which is at the site, all the steel members are being provided, nothing, and the site is being very far located. So what I could do, I cannot bring another one ISA section of higher size. For that, what I can make it, I can make some splicing over there. This splicing also to be utilized or could be utilized for making, let's say, for example, if I have a 6 meter of beam, and if I find that at the site you have been provided me a 3 meter or 4 meter of beam, steel beam, then what I can do, I can make a splicing over here to connect. I can make a splicing over here to connect and to make the 6 meter of the beam. Okay, it may be, it is utilized for the making the entire member, either in a tension member or in a compression member, any bridge deck, because if you think of in a bridge, the entire let's say 30 meter length of the bridge cannot be made with a single member. You have to have your splicing. Okay. Now again, the gusset is coming. I think gusset we have already been covered, and we already know now what is the purpose of this gusset and what it is mean by the gusset. Gusset is nothing but it is a simple plate through which the connections are being made, nothing else. And the gusset plate does not have any breadth or width. It actually governs by its thickness of the gusset plate, whether it is a 10 mm gusset plate or 20 mm or 16 mm gusset plate, that matters. What is the purpose of that? Because at certain point of time, if I want to add or connect all these different members together, in numerically or in the theoretically, what I can do, I can make the model. I can make the model in this particular way. But how to make this connection? Then there should not be any overlap. So for that, I have to make a gusset plate over here. By utilizing the gusset plate, I have to make the connection, all the connections. And for that, you have to identify that what should be the actual thickness of this gusset plate, which to be utilized or to be able to resist that much amount of total resultant force that is coming onto the structure. Okay. Anyway, these are the different configuration of the gusset plate with the different that wherever the members are coming. This is, let's say, for example, this is, let's say, one of the truss bridge configuration. This is also one of the truss bridge configuration. or the steel truss also. It can be like that way. Okay. In the next, this is another one case study. That I-35W Mississippi River water bridge collapse. You will be getting a fantastic overview over there why it has been collapsed. Just let me go with that. This particular bridge has been collapsed. The primary culprit was the gusset plate. You know, the plate thickness was given. The site engineer was provided the plate thickness 50% reduced plate thickness. That has been required for your or that has been provided by the design engineer. Okay. Also, the site engineer thought that okay, I am reducing this thickness, but I can increase the width. No, it is a very dangerous situation. See, all these are the. It is not a build. It is not a in situ construction. In situ means the concrete construction. RCC construction is the in situ construction. Beam and column both are casted monolithically. But here, every member is a different identity. So if the width is longer, definitely you will experience the local buckling. And once the local buckling starts, your entire purpose or the intended purpose of providing the gusset plate is over. So people, without thinking of much into the design or the detailing aspect, people do consider that whatever they feel. So I tried to provide certain typical case study where you might require to know little amount before going to take any decision. Okay. Now, these are the typical design steps for making the design problems or for making the solution of the design problems of the steel design. And I'll be uploading the steel tutorial for the steel design. Perhaps I think 2 or 3 problems I'll be asking you, and have a look into that. And if there is any particular problem or particular issue, then definitely we can discuss. Okay. So with this, I'm just closing off because I think it is 4 o'clock early, 4:02. Okay. Thank you very much for attending the class. Thank you. Do you have any question?